I was making about $60,000 a year while I was in prison. There were other inmates who were making 70, 80,000 a year. There was one guy who was making six figures a year, and we were doing telemarketing. Private companies can actually contract with the Department of Corrections to hire inmates to do labor.
This is the Televerti call center, a group of workers making business-to-business phone calls, selling technology solutions to companies to increase their efficiency and their profits. And while it functions like many similar call centers here in Arizona, there is a stark difference with Televerti. It is inside the walls of Perryville Women's Prison.
When it comes to sales, the private companies were allowed to incentivize us with commissions. So it all started when I arrived at a minimum yard. I had already been in prison for about 3 years. I had 4 years left on my sentence at the time, and I was in a good state of mind. I was working out a lot. Physically, I was healthy. Mentally, I was healthy. I was almost at my halfway point. And then I ran into a person that I knew from a medium maximum yard, and he told me, he said, "Hey, look, there's this job here. It pays $2 an hour, and we are going to be doing telemarketing. I can get you in if you want to get in." And so I said, "Yeah, let's do it." I went and I did the interview. I had almost no sales experience at the time. I had been in prison for 3 years already, so I was probably 21, 22 at this time. They gave me a shot. It was a private company. They were a very small private company that had just learned that you can contract with the prisons to hire inmates. When I got hired, there were 6 other salespeople, so there was a total of 7 of us. And what we were selling on the phone was advertising. So what they would do is they would print out placemats for restaurants. So if you were to go to the restaurant, they'd have a placemat on the table, and your food would go on top of the placemat. And in the middle of the placemat would maybe be like a crossword puzzle or some information about the restaurant. And then all around the placemat were these little business card ads. And so we would call up businesses that were near that restaurant and say, "Hey, my name is Mike. We have placemats over at, the restaurant, and we want you guys to have your ad on the placemat. It's $200. What do you think?" That was the very beginning of it. We did that for a few years. We started to obviously get better and better at it. In the beginning, like I said, there was about 7 of us, and we just slowly built out the team. There was 10 eventually, then 15, then 20, 25. As the sales team grew, the company evolved, and we decided, or the owner of the company decided to, instead of send out placemats for the restaurants, to actually install a TV inside the restaurant and put the menu on the TV and then sell advertising on that screen. So now, instead of being limited to selling 20 ads on a placemat, we could sell 50 ads that were digital, full color, and we could sell more ads per restaurant and increase the price. So this is when the money started to flow. By now, there's probably 30, 40 sales reps. I got promoted to the trainer. I was not the top sales rep. In fact, I was probably the 5th, maybe 6th best in the room. And the owner of that company taught me, he said, you don't put your number 1 sales rep in a training position. You let your 4th or 5th, like one of your good sales reps, but not your best sales rep, do the training. I got hired to do the training, grew the team to the point where we eventually had about 100 people in there. And the owner of the company wanted to incentivize us to sell even more. So he got the prisons to agree to give us about 5% commission and bump our hourly pay from $2 an hour to $3 an hour. Now, first of all, that does not sound like a lot of money, right? Like, you think about $3 an hour. Keep in mind, though, that in prison, one, we don't have the same bills that other people have. We're not paying for groceries. We're not paying for gas or car insurance. We're not paying for cell phone bills. We're not paying for daycare. So inmates have almost no bills. If you're working 40 hours a week, making $3 an hour, that's $120 a week. And the only thing you can really spend it on is commissary, like top ramens and honey buns and, cupcakes or Kool-Aid packets, whatever. If you can save, half of that, $60 a week, that's $240 a month, right? That's like $2,700 a year or something like that. A lot of inmates started getting out with, a few $1,000s. Well, then go and add that 5% commission on there. Some of us started to get really good at sales, and we started to get our numbers up to $10,000 a month, $12,000 a month, $15,000 a month. So we're making $600, $700, $800 a month in commission on top of our hourly. And so now some of us are saving, you know, a couple $1,000s a month. And I saw guys get released with 10, 20, 30, 40, $50,000. Now, I sent a lot of money home to my family at the time, and I saw a lot of other people do the same thing. Some people didn't have families though. Like my one buddy, he got out with 70 grand, and he came home and he bought a Camaro like the same day he got out. Literally just came home, paid cash, and bought a Camaro. And it didn't last very long. I think he wrecked it or something and ended up going back to prison, but that's a story for another time. Going back to the telemarketing, as we started to make more money later on, the prison started to charge us room and board. It sounds crazy, right? But these guys would take a percentage. And in fact, now it's state mandated in Arizona. If you make more than $3 an hour, they will charge you room and board. And it's a percentage, right? Like it's like 50 cents an hour out of your wage will go to room and board. Then they started charging us electricity. If you had more than 2 appliances, you'll pay $2-3 a month for electricity. But we were still able to save a lot because you can't spend too much in prison. You're only allowed to spend $100 a week on commissary. Even after the deductions, we were just, you know, saving and making a lot of money. And the owner of the company wanted to continue to incentivize us. In fact, because he was employing so many inmates and the state was making so much money off of him, he would be able to go to the prisons and say, hey, look, I want to reward the sales team and get them food. So I remember in 2014, I was maybe 2 years from my release date. He talked the prisons into letting us have food from the streets. And he went to a steakhouse. He got us all menus, and we ordered whatever we wanted. And we were in prison eating from a steakhouse. We had filet mignon, we had lobster, we had crab, and shrimp, you know, Caesar salads, just crazy food. And we were eating it in this telemarketing call center, probably 70, 80 of us at the time. It was a crazy experience to be in prison eating filet mignon. But we were making so much money for the owner of the company, and he was making so much money for the prisons that he got the whole thing approved. After that, I'd say, you know, we continued making money. I guess at the very peak of it, I was getting paid as the trainer, so I got everybody who I trained, I got their first 10 sales, and I would be training 4, 5, 6 people at any given time. So my commissions were probably, at their peak, my commissions got to like $6,000 a month. But on average, they were $3,000 to $4,000 a month on top of my hourly. So I was making probably 60, 70 grand every single year I was in prison. My buddy, I'm not gonna say his name, but we're still friends to this day. He made the news because he was making 6 figures a year. He was making more money than the warden. Maybe one day he'll come on my channel and he'll tell his story. He's a very private person, so I'm not gonna say his name. The story did make the news, and he was making more money than the warden. And eventually they found out about that. You know, the prisons were pretty upset that it made the news and it gave them bad media. But anyways, I got released from prison. After I sent a lot of money home for my family, I walked out the gate with over $10,000 in cash. I started my own business. Today, we put TVs inside of gyms, restaurants, automotive centers, urgent care facilities, and we sell advertising on those TVs. We do this in about 20 different states at 400 locations. We have about 30 employees, most of whom are ex-convicts, guys I was in prison with, that when they get out, they hit me up, they call me, and they come work here. Our company's done over $10 million in revenue. That program in prison, that ability to have that job, changed my life. I know it changed a lot of other people's lives. I know a lot of people look at it negatively, like it's almost slave labor, slave wages. That's not the reality. We were in prison doing nothing, and they gave us a chance to make a lot of money. They gave us a chance to learn an extremely valuable skill. They taught us how to work as a team. They taught us sales. And overall, I'm just very fortunate that I was able to have that opportunity, because my life looks much different now than it did then. And so on this channel, I talk about that. I talk about the change from, you know, all of those years ago to today. If you guys like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this. And I really appreciate you guys tuning in. Look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks.